When we heard Karin was coming, we decided to put her on stage and ask her a few questions. But before I do, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about Karin. Karin is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Robeco. She's also the chair of the executive committee. She joined Robeco in 2006 and has had several positions in senior leadership at Robeco, including Chief Operating Officer, Deputy CEO, Chief Information Officer, and Head of Operational Risk Management. And she became CEO in January 22. Karin also serves on a number of boards across finance, education, and I'm happy to see the arts too. Thank you. Just reflecting a commitment to long-term thinking and a diversity of perspective. Welcome, Karin.
Thank you very much. And thank you also very much for having me today. Actually, 2026 marks an impressive milestone for us because it's our 10-year anniversary of working together and our presence here in the African markets and more to come. But it's a great time for us.
Thank you. We actually had a conversation about that earlier with some of your team members and we look forward to it.
Great.
One of the questions that we wanted to check with you or to ask you whilst you're here is, given everything that Sanisha mentioned today, there's a lot of complexity in the globe, particularly in the markets. And for asset managers, how do you adapt to this increasing, I suppose, complexity and geopolitical situation that we are seeing currently in the market? And what is, from a Robeco perspective, how do you guys adapt and adopt to different, I suppose, geopolitical issues that you see?
Yeah. I think Sanisha did an amazing job painting the picture of the world today. So that's the part I will not repeat and skip. But I think given the fact that we live on the same planet, it's one globe, but to look at it from pure globalization perspective, I think that is going to be very difficult. We see with all of the events that are happening in today's world that we need to adjust and we need to make sure that we can deal with all these differences that influence financial markets, influence our operating models as asset managers. What I find very important to mention is that in a world, whether we talk about polarization, it's extremely important to know that there's not a single company that holds the lens of the world. I think it's extremely important to balance where we sit in the world depends our views and drives our thoughts and ideas, and so does our clients. So I think it's important for an asset manager to really be cognizant of the fact that there is not a single truth. Whether you like it or not, there are different perspectives, and it's up to us to accommodate those various perspectives. So I think that's crucial. The other part is for asset managers, specifically in today's world, is of crucial importance to know who you are. So this is about our corporate identity. I think it's important to speak up to what you believe in, to your strengths, and who you are in this world. Where do you want to play for who in which part of the world? To be outspoken about that, to be in line and in sync with that corporate identity is clear, because this is also where credibility in your leadership starts. I think one of the important things for asset managers is the topics of flexibility, adaptability, and resilience are words that I think we read in many, many of the papers and white papers. But what it actually means and what do you do with this and how do you implement that in an organization, that is very difficult. And again, here there is not one solution. But what I do see is across the value chain of asset managers, it's very important to see how can I design for flexibility? How can I design to be resilient? And what choices then do I make? So for us, for instance, it is clear who we are. I'll get to that a little bit later on. But also to know where our strengths lie. You mentioned this in the quantitative space. One of the taglines of Robeco is being the investment engineers with close to 100 years of existence. That's a core strength of who we are. So that is also something that we continuously invest in. But it's also about the diversification of a platform. It is not one specific investment capability. It's also next to quant about the fundamental space. It's about sustainable investing. So to have a diversified platform from a capability perspective, from a distribution channel perspective, from a client-based perspective, from different geographies, I think is very important in order to play to all of the regional differences. I think the other part is also the operating model. And as you nicely introduced me as a former COO, I love the topic of operations and technology, but also the operating model and the choices that you have to be flexible. So for Robeco, that meant that a couple of years ago, we decided to fully outsource everything past trade execution to a larger platform where we could lift off their technology spending, where we are more flexible. And sometimes that means that my bill grows, but that's a happy problem to have because that means also my business is growing. But in more difficult markets, this means that my bill is dropping. And that type of flexibility in today's world, we need as well. So to summarize, what is the important part for the asset manager? Clarity on the who you are in this
Yeah.
world, not hold one lens of the world, take regional perspectives, think about your operating model, but also think about how you plan and how you structure. For instance, for Rico, that meant we had 5-year strategy execution plans. 5 years is a long time in today's world. So I felt the need to shorten that. At the same time, then there's the risk of shortism, and that's for an asset manager not good. So I spent time with the team to define our Northern Star, corporate identity. Who are you to who in which part of the world? Where do you want to play? What is your strength? What are your targets? What do you aim for? And actually to drive that execution along the lines of 3-year execution plans to get there. So I think also the planning cycle and how you do that is important to really give topics like resilience and flexibility hand and feet.
Okay, thank you. And as you mentioned, you offer a fundamental. We specifically looked at Robeco in terms of enhanced indexation, and one of the things we loved about you was the fact that you were one of the leaders in sustainability, which is crucial for us. And you'll see why our fund is called the Curate Global Sustainable Equity Fund. I suppose the question for you then, if you look at it from that lens, how is Robeco's approach evolving, and what trends stand out for you at the moment?
Yeah, I think there were similarities in the answer to the other question. I think for us, sustainable investing is something that is very close to the heart. It's part of our DNA. We have been doing this work ever since the 80s. So when the hype, I would call it hype, everyone's just jumping on this topic. For us, that was a continuation of something that we already strongly believed in. But what we do see also based on climate surveys that we issue with global investors is that, yes, we see a dispersion of commitments to net zero alliances, to climate commitments. It's very different. So for us to, again, not hold the lens of the world, to not be driving one single truth, to not be normative, but to work with our clients to see where can you put the lever between risk, return, and sustainability is crucial. So for us to understand where is the appetite, where is it not in today's world, how can we use all of the building blocks for ourselves? And how can we make sure that we create investment solutions with SI inside for any client across the globe if this is what our client wants? So I think it's important that SI is something that for us we can only stay on course because it's part of who we are. I think one of the things that is interesting for us, it is important to monitor what is the dynamic around sustainable investing globally. So we've mentioned military expenses, we've mentioned defense industry. So for us, it's crucial to monitor, to also see the investment opportunities, keeping in mind exclusions, keeping in mind what you strongly believe in yourself. And for us, that monitoring also led to widening the definition of weapons, weapon related or non-weapon related industries to optimize along that definition to create optionality and choices for clients that work with us. So I think the topic of SI is one that's being talked about a lot. But the other part I wanted to mention on the climate survey is that it is not a fallback that will not recover. It's merely pacing or temporary slowing down, basically because the problems of the world have not been solved and that there are enough, I would say, investment opportunities if we invest in companies that move along the lines of changing their business model and adapting to the new world realities. So for us, staying on course.
That's good to know. That's why we selected you.
Yeah, great.
If I just go back to quant investing, and we chose enhanced indexation as the approach that we would like you to manage for us. There's some people, and you'll hear some of the speakers. We'll hear some of the speakers today talk about how active versus passive. Where do you see quant investing go over the next 5 years? And should people be switching now across between active and passive, or quants per se?
I think if you look into of course, the rise of passive, the rise of alternatives, this is something that's been going on for a long time. But what I do see for us, we are pure active players, and my colleague Jan is going to be on stage later on to also talk about one of the offerings that we have, where we talk about semi-passive or solutions, low light tracking area solutions that are close to passive. But for us, it's all about active asset management, because here we believe we can customize. Here we can believe we can use the IP across the broader investment platform. We can use our SI IP into client solutions that you absolutely cannot do on the passive side. So I believe the need for customization that will drive, again, also the interest in active asset
Yeah.
management. And I think quant, I'll leave that up to Jan to discuss, but is in that sweet spot of where appetite today is.
And I agree. I mean, we have lots of conversations with our clients and we talk about enhanced indexation, and everyone feels that it is or thinks that it's similar to passive, or it is passive, but actually it is an active way of managing assets.
Yes.
And for us, it's particularly why we chose Robeco to manage our sustainable equity funds. And next up, I will actually ask Jan to come up and tell us a bit more about that. But on behalf of all of us here at Curate, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. I know you're missing us on Friday in Cape Town, but your next trip, we can definitely.
Next time.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Karin.
Thank you.
Thank you.